She feared being matched with a human, until the soldier transformed everything. Her kind, the Valorians, were known for their intelligence, their precision, and their calm. They prided themselves on careful thought and careful action. Humans, on the other hand, were loud, chaotic, and unpredictable. And yet here she was, walking toward the match hall, her stomach twisting with a mix of dread and curiosity. Today was the day the AI would announce her match. She had prepared for this moment for years. Every Valorian had. The match system, an interstellar program, paired beings from every corner of the galaxy based on compatibility, intelligence, and potential for harmony. The program was flawless, or so everyone said. Yet, despite the system's precision, Lyra felt a cold knot in her chest. She had studied every report, every statistic about human pairings. They were often difficult. Loud arguments, reckless decisions, failures that cost time, energy, and occasionally reputations. Lyra quickened her pace. The match hall was a massive dome of translucent glass, stretching high into the sky. It shimmered with light, reflecting the clouds above and the city below. She took a deep breath, smoothing her long, silver robes and checking her posture. Valorians believed in presentation. Every movement, every expression mattered. She could not afford to betray her fear. Inside, the hall was quiet, almost reverent. Rows of seats curved in a semicircle around a central platform where the AI would display the pairings. Lyra sat down, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Around her, other beings of countless species whispered nervously, their excitement and fear mingling in the air. She did not whisper. She did not fidget. She only waited, eyes fixed on the glowing platform. The AI's voice rang out, calm and melodic, filling the vast hall. Welcome, participants, to the galactic match ceremony. Your matches will be revealed in 3, 2, 1. A soft hum ran through the floor, and a holographic projection flickered to life above the platform. Names and images floated in the air, connected by glowing lines. Lyra's name appeared with a bright blue glow. She felt her chest tighten. The image of her match appeared beside her name. Her eyes widened and her breath caught. He was human. Lyra had imagined humans countless times in her mind. Tall, rough, brash, usually unpolished in every way the Valorians valued. And here he was, standing in the hologram, broad-shouldered, with a square jaw and dark eyes that seemed too alive, too intense. His uniform marked him as a soldier, a protector, a fighter, not a thinker, not a careful planner. A ripple of gasps ran through the hall. Some participants murmured in surprise, others exchanged concerned glances. Lyra felt the weight of every expectation, every stereotype about humans pressing down on her. She had feared this moment more than any exam, more than any mission. She had always told herself she would manage it, but seeing him there, so solid and confident, made her fear almost tangible. She studied his expression. He looked calm, almost amused, as if he knew he had just caused a stir. His eyes met hers through the hologram for a brief moment, and she felt something strange, a mixture of irritation and curiosity. How could someone so human, so loud and unpolished, seem so certain of himself? The AI continued, oblivious to her panic. Participants are encouraged to meet their matches in the designated preparation zones. Communication is encouraged but not mandatory. Lyra rose stiffly from her seat, moving toward the nearest exit. She needed space. She needed air. She needed to think. Her mind raced with questions. What would she say? How could she possibly relate to him? Could she even survive a single conversation without offending him or revealing her fear? The hall emptied gradually, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Outside, the city stretched in every direction, alive with movement and light. Ships hovered overhead, trading goods and passengers between planets, while pedestrians of countless species hurried through the streets. Lyra found a quiet courtyard, her robes brushing the smooth stone floor as she walked. Her mind was a storm. She thought of the reports she had read, the human soldiers who had saved entire colonies by making reckless choices, their unpredictability a double-edged sword. They were heroes in some stories, disasters in others. Lyra had never met a human personally, yet she felt she already understood them too well. She had studied them like a scientist studying an unknown species, analyzing patterns, predicting behavior. And yet nothing in her careful analysis could prepare her for the feeling she experienced now, anticipation mixed with fear, a thrill she could not explain. A soft voice startled her. Lyra. She turned quickly to see him standing at the edge of the courtyard, the human soldier from the hologram. His presence was immediate, undeniable. He smiled, not a wide grin, but a simple, confident smile that made her stomach twist. You're human," she managed, her voice tight. "Yes," he said, his tone casual. "Jerk, and you must be Lyra. The AI said we're paired." Lyra blinked. She had expected arrogance, brashness, perhaps even a mocking tone. Instead, he seemed straightforward. Almost curious, not threatening. She found herself studying him as he studied her, noting the way his posture suggested readiness, the slight twitch of his fingers as if he was always prepared for action. Why me?" she asked, more to herself than to him. Jerk shrugged. "No idea. The AI doesn't explain much, but it chose us, so I guess we'll have to figure it out together." Lyra frowned. "Figure it out together?" The words felt foreign on her tongue, the idea of collaboration with a human more unsettling than she had imagined. Jerk chuckled softly. "Don't worry, I'm not as scary as I look." Lyra couldn't help but notice the ease with which he spoke, the lack of pretension, the quiet confidence. She had expected chaos, but there was something controlled about him, something different from the humans she had imagined from the reports. They walked together through the preparation zones, a sprawling area filled with training modules, simulation rooms, and observation decks. Lyra moved cautiously, keeping a small distance between them, while Jerk seemed to navigate the space as if he had been there before. "You've done this before, haven't you?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Not really," he admitted. "But humans adapt fast. We learn by doing." Lyra felt a spark of something, admiration, curiosity, confusion, mixing in her chest. Humans adapted fast, yes, but could they adapt enough to match her precision, her careful calculations, her way of thinking? "Then we'll see," she said, her voice firmer than she felt. "We'll see if your adaptation is enough," he grinned. "Challenge accepted." For the first time since the announcement, Lyra felt a flicker of excitement. Perhaps this pairing was not a disaster waiting to happen. Perhaps, just perhaps, humans had something to offer that no careful calculation could predict. As they entered the first simulation room, the AI's voice guided them through the scenario, a rescue mission on a distant colony threatened by a natural disaster. Lyra immediately began analyzing every detail: structural weaknesses, environmental hazards, survival strategies. She moved with the fluid precision of her species, noting every variable, every risk. Jerk, meanwhile, moved differently. He did not scan, he did not calculate, at least not in the way she expected. He acted. He adjusted, he improvised, he reacted. And slowly, Lyra realized something astonishing. His actions, while seemingly reckless, were effective. Problems she had calculated might take hours to solve were resolved in minutes by his unexpected approach. She watched him, her fear mingling with disbelief. Could it be that humans were not only unpredictable but useful in ways she could never have anticipated? The simulation ended. The AI announced their success. Lyra's heart was pounding, but not with fear. It was with anticipation, a new curiosity she could not ignore. Jerk turned to her, his smile quiet but confident. "You're not scared of me anymore, are you?" he asked. Lyra hesitated, then shook her head. I don't think I am." For the first time, she wondered if perhaps being paired with a human was not a punishment, not a risk, but an opportunity. Perhaps this human soldier, loud and unpredictable, could teach her something she had never learned from careful study, from data, from analysis. Perhaps he could transform everything. And deep down, Lyra felt a spark of hope. A spark that whispered that maybe, just maybe, humans were worth the fear she had felt all her life. Lyra could not sleep that night. Even though the simulations were over, the images of Jerk's quick thinking and fearless actions stayed with her. She had always believed that humans were too chaotic, too unpredictable, and yet here was a human soldier who seemed to balance risk and precision in a way she could not understand. Her mind kept replaying moments from the day, the way he had lifted heavy debris with a simple, clever maneuver, the way he had remained calm when alarms blared, and the quiet confidence in his dark eyes. Morning came slowly, painting the twin suns across the sky. Lyra dressed carefully, choosing soft colors that reflected her species, elegance, and discipline. She had been taught that first impressions mattered greatly, even if one already knew a partner. She wanted to appear in control, composed, ready for whatever the AI might throw at them next. The preparation hall was buzzing when she arrived. Participants were paired for a series of team-building exercises designed to test adaptability and cooperation. Lyra's stomach tightened as she spotted Jerk already standing by the entrance, arms crossed casually. Unlike the other humans she had read about in reports, loud, restless, sometimes rude, he seemed patient, observant. A spark of respect grew in her chest. "Good morning," he said, giving her a simple nod. There was no grand gesture, no unnecessary talk, just acknowledgement. "Good morning," she replied, her voice calm but betraying a flicker of excitement. The first exercise was simple in theory. Navigate a complex maze that shifted dynamically, with sensors and moving walls, to retrieve a core object at its center. Lyra immediately began scanning the walls, noting their patterns, timing her steps, calculating the optimal path. Jerk, as always, moved differently. He walked deliberately, observing, testing, and occasionally moving in ways Lyra would never have predicted. "Stop!" he called suddenly. "There's a floor panel there, step on it and it triggers a trap." Lyra froze, impressed. She had not noticed the subtle shift in the floor. She had been so focused on the walls, on the timing, on the patterns, that she almost walked into a trap. Her chest warmed with recognition. This human had instincts she did not fully understand, yet they were incredibly effective. They moved together through the maze, a combination of her careful planning and his intuitive risk-taking. Walls shifted, traps activated, and yet they progressed faster than Lyra had imagined possible. For the first time, she realized that human unpredictability was not always a weakness. It could be an advantage when paired with discipline and observation. By the time they reached the center, sweat glistening on her skin and robes slightly rumpled, she was no longer afraid. She looked at Jerk, who was grinning, slightly out of breath. "Not bad," he said. "You've got sharp eyes and a calm head. I like that." Lyra felt a blush rise to her cheeks, not entirely from exertion. Praise from a human, particularly one she had feared, felt different. She nodded, trying to appear neutral. "Your instincts are remarkable," she said, genuinely. "I did not expect them to be so precise." He laughed softly. "Humans have surprises. We like to keep things interesting." Lyra did not respond immediately. The truth was, she liked that unpredictability too, in a strange, stirring way she could not yet name. The next exercise took them to a simulation of a damaged space station orbiting a dying planet. The scenario was urgent: stabilize the station before critical systems failed. Lyra immediately began calculating structural stresses, analyzing power flow, and mapping out the safest path to the core reactor. Jerk, true to form, did not begin with calculations. He moved toward the unstable corridors, listening, observing, and occasionally shouting instructions to her when he spotted something she had missed. "Over here," he called. "This hatch can support your weight and it leads straight to the reactor." Lyra glanced at the hatch, hesitating. Her instincts told her to test it first, run calculations, measure its tolerance. But she saw the confidence in Jerk's movements, the way he balanced speed with caution. She made a decision, surprising herself, and followed him. The hatch held, they reached the reactor with seconds to spare. "Impressive," Lyra admitted, her voice low. "I misjudged that. You were right." Jerk gave a small shrug as if it were nothing. "Sometimes you just have to trust instinct." Lyra considered that, trust instinct. The concept was foreign, yet perhaps not entirely wrong. She had spent so much of her life relying on data, analysis, and precision that she had almost forgotten the power of intuition, of quick judgment in moments when there was no time to calculate every variable. As the exercises continued over the next few hours, Lyra began to notice patterns in Jerk's approach. He adapted to every challenge with a fluidity that amazed her. He made mistakes occasionally, yes, but he corrected them quickly, learning from each small error. By the end of the day, Lyra felt a growing admiration, not just for his skill, but for the way humans could combine boldness with learning, unpredictability with progress. During a quiet break, they sat together on a balcony overlooking the city. The suns had lowered in the sky, casting long shadows across the spires and streets below. Lyra sipped a warm drink, her mind still racing. "Why do humans do that?" she asked suddenly, nodding toward the simulation console where Jerk had just corrected a potentially disastrous error without hesitation. "Do what?" he asked, tilting his head. "Take risks. When you don't know the outcome, when there is danger, you still act." Jerk smiled. "Because doing nothing rarely helps anyone. You can't calculate every variable in life. Sometimes you have to act, see what happens, and adapt." Lyra considered his words. For the first time, she felt a flicker of understanding. Humans were not careless. They were not reckless without reason. Their unpredictability was part of a larger system, one that combined observation, learning, and boldness in a way she had never experienced. "You make it sound admirable," she said quietly. "Maybe it is," he replied. "I think it's all about balance. You bring calculation and precision. I bring, well, whatever humans bring. Together we might just cover what the other lacks." Lyra's heart lifted at the thought. Perhaps this pairing, feared by her and others, was not a punishment at all. Perhaps it was a chance to learn, to grow, to see the galaxy through a lens she had never known. They spent the evening walking through the city, observing the interplay of species, technology, and culture. Jerk asked questions, sometimes strange, sometimes insightful, and Lyra answered with explanations that fascinated him. They laughed at minor misunderstandings and shared moments of quiet awe at the beauty around them. By the time they returned to the preparation quarters, Lyra's fear had transformed into curiosity, and curiosity into cautious excitement. She realized that humans were not simply chaotic. They were adaptable, resilient, and capable of seeing solutions where others saw only problems. And Jerk was a perfect example, a soldier who combined courage with intelligence, instinct with learning. Before parting for the night, Jerk turned to her. "You'll be ready tomorrow," he said, nodding. "The AI has more challenges for us and we'll need to face them together, but I think we'll do well." Lyra hesitated, then nodded. "Yes," she said, more firmly than she expected. "I believe we will." Alone in her quarters, Lyra reflected on the day. Her fear of humans had been strong, almost overwhelming, but it had not prepared her for what she had learned. Humans were not predictable, yes, but that unpredictability was not weakness. It was strength. And Jerk, in his quiet, confident way, had shown her a side of humanity that was both inspiring and transformative. Sleep came at last, but it was not the restless, anxious sleep she had expected. It was deep, filled with dreams of possibility, of discovery, and of the unexpected strength that humans could bring to a universe built on logic and precision. For the first time, Lyra felt a spark of excitement she could not suppress. She had feared being paired with a human, feared the chaos they might bring, feared the disruption of her carefully ordered life. But now, as she drifted into sleep, she understood something important. Humans were not to be feared. They were to be understood, respected, and perhaps even admired. And with that thought, she dreamed not of fear, but of potential. Potential that Jerk and humans like him could unlock. A potential that might change everything she had ever believed about the galaxy, about cooperation, and about the power of unexpected partnerships. The day began, with a soft light spilling over the crystalline spires of Zephyria, painting the city in warm gold and violet hues. Lyra awoke with a strange sense of anticipation. She had learned much from her pairing with Jerk over the past day. He was unpredictable, yes, but his unpredictability was a skill in itself. She felt the stirrings of something she had never expected: trust, curiosity, and even admiration. Today, the AI had planned something new, and the thought both excited and unnerved her. The preparation hall was already alive with movement when she arrived. Participants were divided into teams and guided to the first challenge of the day, a simulation of a remote planet struggling under environmental stress. The mission was straightforward but complex: assess the dangers, stabilize the environment, and rescue stranded scientists. Lyra glanced around at the other participants, their forms reflecting alien diversity, each species with unique abilities and approaches. But her focus was on one person, Jerk. He stood near the entrance, arms crossed loosely, scanning the room with a calm, steady gaze. When he saw her, he smiled. There was no fanfare, no boastful display, just a quiet confidence that unsettled her more than any human she had imagined before. "Ready for another day of chaos?" he asked lightly. Lyra suppressed a smile. "I am prepared," she said, though the word felt strange on her lips. She had not felt prepared for anything human before, yet here she was, willing to face unpredictability because of him. They moved together to the simulation platform, a massive dome that shimmered as it projected the environment of the distant planet. The air inside the dome was thick and humid, the sky a dim green from the unusual atmospheric composition. They were immediately confronted with hazards: unstable cliffs, rivers of molten mineral, and structures on the verge of collapse. The stranded scientists were scattered across the terrain, trapped and panicked. Lyra instinctively began her calculations, scanning the terrain for risks and mapping safe paths. Every detail was analyzed. The weight of rocks, the speed of the flowing rivers, the structural integrity of crumbling buildings. She noted the sequence of actions that would ensure safety and efficiency. She was confident, as always, that logic and calculation would guide them to success. Jerk, as usual, moved differently. He did not start with calculation. He stepped forward, observing the environment, touching surfaces, and listening to the sounds of shifting ground. Lyra watched him with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. His instincts, honed from years of soldiering, allowed him to predict danger in ways no analysis could match. He directed her with calm authority, pointing out a loose rock here, a weak ledge there. "Step over this," he said, "and follow me, trust me." Lyra hesitated for a heartbeat. Every part of her wanted to recalculate, to double-check, to ensure absolute safety. Yet she saw the confidence in his movements, the precision behind his apparent improvisation. She followed, trusting, not blindly, but with a growing sense that his instincts were reliable. The mission required them to work quickly. Some scientists were trapped under debris, others stranded on unstable cliffs. Lyra calculated the safest method for each rescue, while Jerk acted swiftly, lifting debris, creating support structures, and improvising bridges. Lyra began to see a pattern. His spontaneity complemented her caution. Where she paused to consider, he acted to create opportunity. Together, they moved faster and more efficiently than either could have alone. At one point, a sudden tremor shook the ground, sending loose rocks tumbling toward a trapped scientist. Lyra froze, calculating trajectories and probabilities. Jerk acted instantly, diving forward and grabbing the scientist, pulling him to safety with a strength that was surprising, yet measured. Lyra's calculations had suggested a slower, more controlled approach, but Jerk's instinctive timing had saved valuable seconds. "Impressive," Lyra said, breathless as she helped stabilize the area. "You calculated it in real time without numbers." He smiled, brushing dust from his uniform. "Humans don't always need numbers. We have other ways to figure things out." Lyra frowned thoughtfully. She had always believed that precision, logic, and calculation were the only paths to success. Yet here was proof that intuition, experience, and trust in one's own instincts could achieve results just as impressive, sometimes even more so. As they continued, Lyra noticed that Jerk's human perspective brought new ideas to problems she had considered fixed. When a bridge collapsed under their weight, she had calculated a way to repair it that would take time. Jerk simply found a nearby fallen tree, used it to span the gap, and tested its strength in moments. The bridge held. Lyra realized that humans, with all their supposed chaos, had a unique ability to improvise solutions in ways no calculation could predict. By midday, the mission had progressed farther than Lyra had ever expected. The stranded scientists were rescued, the environment stabilized, and the team had not suffered a single injury. Lyra felt a strange mixture of exhilaration and disbelief. She had feared being paired with a human, yet here she was, thriving under the combination of calculation and instinct. During a brief rest, she and Jerk sat on a rock overlooking the transformed landscape. The air was cooler here, the sun filtering through the green-tinged sky. Lyra sipped water, feeling a warmth she could not entirely explain. "You make it look easy," she said quietly. Jerk shook his head. "It's not easy, it's just different. We adapt as we go. You plan, I act, and somehow it works." Lyra considered this adaptation. She had always believed in preparation, in knowing every possibility before it occurred. But humans adapted in ways that were impossible to predict. Perhaps she had misunderstood them all along. Perhaps their chaos was not disorder, but a form of intelligence she had never fully appreciated. "You are effective," she admitted, the words tasting strange yet true. "Perhaps more than I expected." He smiled again, a quiet, easy smile that made her heart beat faster than she wanted to admit. "Thanks. I think you're pretty effective yourself. You see the world in ways I never could. Without your calculations, I'd probably have fallen into trouble more than once today." Lyra's mind replayed the day's events. Every time she had doubted him, he had proved her wrong. Every time she had relied solely on calculation, he had added something she could not quantify: courage, intuition, and a readiness to act. She realized that humans, for all their chaos, had a strength that was different from hers, but no less valuable. The afternoon brought a new challenge. The environmental systems of the planet were unstable, and a sudden storm threatened to undo their progress. Lyra immediately began calculating wind patterns, energy flows, and potential hazards. Jerk, as always, observed, acted, and adjusted. When lightning struck dangerously close, Lyra froze, calculating the probability of danger. Jerk grabbed her hand, pulling her to cover, his grip firm and steady. "You trust me?" he asked, eyes locking on hers. Lyra hesitated, then she nodded. I trust you." It was a small moment, almost invisible in the chaos of the storm, but it was significant. She had never trusted a human in such a way. And yet with Jerk it felt right. Together, they guided the scientists to safety, reinforced unstable structures, and finally stabilized the storm's effects. Exhausted but triumphant, they sat together once more as the planet's skies cleared, the sun reflecting off alien mountains and rivers. Lyra felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of relief, admiration, and something new, something she could not yet name. "You are unlike any human I imagined," she said softly. Jerk laughed lightly. "I get that a lot, but maybe that's because you imagined us all wrong." Lyra smiled faintly. Perhaps she had. Perhaps humans were not to be feared, not to be underestimated. Perhaps they were partners, capable of inspiring, complimenting, and even teaching. The return to Zephyria was quiet, reflective. Lyra thought of the day's events, of Jerk's actions, and of her own reactions. Fear had once ruled her thoughts about humans. Now admiration was slowly taking its place, tempered with curiosity and a desire to understand more. In her quarters that evening, she reviewed the mission logs, noting how her calculations had intersected with Jerk's improvisations. She realized that humans did not follow the predictable paths she had always trusted, yet their results were often extraordinary. Lyra felt a sense of excitement she had not known before, the thrill of partnership, of discovery, of possibility. She drifted to sleep with a sense of wonder, thinking of Jerk and the day they had shared. Fear was no longer the dominant emotion. Instead, it was curiosity, trust, and an appreciation for the unexpected strength humans could offer. She knew the AI would present more challenges tomorrow, but she no longer felt dread. She felt readiness. And deep down, a spark of something else lingered, hope. Hope that humans, with all their unpredictability and courage, could change the way she saw the galaxy, and perhaps even change her own understanding of what was possible. The morning on Zephyria began with a quiet tension that Lyra could feel in the air. Today, the AI had scheduled a simulation unlike any before. The mission briefing described a rogue artificial intelligence that had taken control of an abandoned research station orbiting a remote planet. The station's systems were sabotaged, its corridors unstable, and the scientists' data in danger of being lost forever. The AI emphasized urgency. Failure was not an option. Lyra felt a familiar tightness in her chest. She had faced simulations before, but this one carried a weight she had not yet experienced. It was complex, unpredictable, and dangerous. She glanced at Jerk as he arrived at the briefing room, his dark eyes focused and steady. Unlike her, he showed no sign of anxiety. His calm confidence unsettled her as it often did, but it also made her feel safer. "Ready for another challenge?" he asked lightly. Lyra swallowed and nodded. "I am prepared. We must proceed carefully." Jerk smiled. "Careful, yes, but let's also be smart about acting. Sometimes waiting too long is worse than a small risk." Lyra studied him, noting how he balanced caution with decisiveness. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but when faced with danger, their instincts often guided them faster than logic alone. She felt a spark of hope. Perhaps this mission, however daunting, could teach her even more about human potential. The simulation began as the duo entered the station. The doors sealed behind them and the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the metal corridors. Alarms blared as automated defense systems misfired, and Lyra immediately began analyzing the environment. She calculated structural integrity, energy flow, and possible escape routes. Jerk, meanwhile, moved differently. He did not scan with precision, he scanned with intuition. He listened to the hum of machinery, felt the vibrations in the floor, and observed subtle cues that Lyra would have dismissed as irrelevant. When a floor panel shook ominously beneath their feet, he reacted instantly, pulling her to a safe area before she could finish her calculations. "You trust me?" he asked, eyes meeting hers. Lyra hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded. "Yes, I trust your instincts." That moment marked a subtle but significant change in her perspective. She had once feared humans for their unpredictability, But now she saw that unpredictability as a form of intelligence. Jerk's instincts were not careless. They were honed by experience, adaptability, and courage. The station's AI, corrupted and rogue, created new challenges at every turn. Doors locked and unlocked unpredictably, lights flickered to confuse them, and automated repair bots malfunctioned, blocking critical pathways. Lyra calculated the safest paths, predicting potential hazards with precision, while Jerk acted decisively, improvising solutions in real time. Together, they complemented each other perfectly, her foresight and his intuition their strengths intertwined. At one point, they encountered a large corridor filled with malfunctioning machinery. Sparks flew and loose cables swung dangerously. Lyra's calculations suggested a slow, cautious approach, testing each step. Jerk, however, moved quickly, using a combination of jumps, rolls, and quick grabs to navigate the space. When a cable snapped and threatened to hit Lyra, Jerk's hand caught hers, steadying her before she stumbled. "Humans are fast," Lyra admitted, her voice catching slightly. "And precise in their own way," Jerk grinned. "We learn by doing, that's our strength." Lyra began to see the truth in his words. Humans did not always rely on rigid rules or pre-planned calculations. Their strength lay in their ability to adapt, to improvise, and to act decisively in moments of uncertainty. She had spent her life believing that calculation alone was the key to success, but Jerk had shown her another way, one that combined action, observation, and courage. As they approached the control center, the AI's interference intensified. Doors locked, forcing them to find alternate routes. Security bots activated, scanning for intruders. Lyra hesitated, calculating probabilities, while Jerk acted instantly, using a small tool to disable one of the bots. Her breath caught as she realized he had solved the problem in seconds, an outcome that would have taken her minutes of careful planning. "You are remarkable," she said quietly. He shrugged modestly. "We're a team, we do what we need to do." The control center was the final challenge. The rogue AI had locked critical systems and time was running out. Lyra immediately began analyzing the interface, calculating sequences and bypass protocols. Jerk, as always, moved differently. He touched screens, tested patterns, and observed responses in real time. Where Lyra saw complexity, he saw opportunity. Together, their approaches merged into a single, efficient strategy. The minutes felt like hours. The tension in the room was palpable. Every second counted. Lyra felt her mind working at full speed, calculating every move, every potential consequence. Yet she also felt something new, a sense of trust in Jerk's instincts, in his ability to act decisively when logic alone might have failed. A critical moment arrived when a security protocol threatened to lock down the system permanently. Lyra calculated the safest method to override it, but it would take precious minutes. Jerk, however, identified a shortcut risky but effective. "Trust me," he said, and without waiting for her approval, he implemented it. The lights flickered, sparks flew, alarms blared. And then silence. The rogue AI systems powered down, the station stabilized, and the scientists' data was saved. Lyra felt a rush of relief and awe. Jerk turned to her, eyes bright, and offered a small, satisfied smile. "You saved the mission," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Your instincts, they worked." Jerk shook his head. "We saved it together. Your calculations, my improvisation, we make a good team." Lyra realized that he was right. She had once feared humans, believed their unpredictability to be dangerous. But now she saw that human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability were not weaknesses. They were strengths that could transform even the most impossible situations. The return journey to Zephyria was quiet. Lyra reflected on the mission, replaying every moment in her mind. She had learned that humans did not act recklessly, they acted decisively, guided by intuition and experience. She had learned that fear of the unknown could be replaced with trust, understanding, and respect. As they approached the city, Jerk spoke softly. "You've changed, you know, you don't look as tense as yesterday." Lyra smiled faintly. "Perhaps I have learned something. Humans may not be as chaotic as I believed." He laughed quietly. "We're unpredictable, yes. But we're also capable of amazing things. You just have to see it to understand it." Lyra considered his words. She had spent her life studying humans from afar, imagining them through reports and statistics, but nothing compared to experiencing it firsthand. She had once feared being paired with a human. Now she admired him. She trusted him. and in ways she had not yet admitted, she felt inspired by him. That night, Lyra returned to her quarters and reviewed the mission logs. Every action, every decision, every calculated step merged with Jerk's improvisation in her mind. She realized that humans had a form of intelligence that could not be measured by calculations alone. It was adaptive, flexible, and courageous, a force that could complement even the most precise logic. She sat by her window, looking out at the stars above Zephyria. The city sparkled below, alive with countless species and technologies, and she thought of the challenges they would face tomorrow. The AI would no doubt present new obstacles, new simulations, but she no longer feared them. She had learned that human unpredictability was not to be feared but embraced, that courage and intuition could achieve what logic alone could not. A small smile curved her lips. Perhaps being paired with a human was not punishment at all. Perhaps it was a gift. And as she drifted into sleep, Lyra felt a spark of excitement and hope. She had faced fear and uncertainty, and she had discovered something extraordinary. Humans were not simply chaotic. They were capable, courageous, and transformative. And she had only just begun to understand the power of what she and Jerk could accomplish together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Lyra was ready. And for the first time, she felt not fear, but possibility. The day dawned over Zephyria with a golden light that reflected off the city's crystalline towers. Lyra woke with a sense of purpose she had never felt before. For days, she had faced simulations and challenges with Jerk, learning to trust not only his instincts, but the unexpected strengths humans possessed. Today's assignment was the final test. The one the AI had warned was the most difficult. A real-world interstellar negotiation on a recently discovered planet, where delicate alliances had to be preserved to prevent conflict. Lyra dressed with care, her robes flowing elegantly over her frame, and made her way to the transport bay. Jerk was already waiting, leaning casually against the wall. His posture was relaxed, yet his eyes were alert, taking in every detail of the room. Lyra's heart quickened, not from fear this time, but from anticipation. She had come to respect him, to rely on him, and she realized she had begun to admire him. "Good morning," he said with his usual calm confidence. "Ready to save the galaxy." Lyra allowed herself a small smile. "Let us hope it is that simple." The transport ship lifted off, its engines humming smoothly as it carried them through space toward the new planet. Lyra reviewed the mission briefing one last time. The planet, called Navara, was home to a coalition of alien species who had recently discovered valuable mineral deposits. Tensions were high. A single misstep could spark a war, undoing years of diplomatic progress. The AI emphasized that negotiation required patience, strategy, and understanding, but it did not account for human creativity. "Are you nervous?" Jerk asked, glancing at her. Lyra hesitated, then shook her head. "I feel prepared." "We must rely on strategy, observation, and precision," he nodded thoughtfully. "And don't forget a little improvisation. You've seen how that works." Lyra considered this, a small smile tugging at her lips. Over the past days, she had seen Jerk's improvisation transform impossible situations into successes. Perhaps today, it would do the same. The planet's surface came into view, a landscape of jagged mountains, emerald forests, and rivers that glimmered under the sunlight. As they landed, they were greeted by representatives from the coalition, each species striking in its uniqueness, and each watching them with wary eyes. Lyra's analytical mind immediately began observing mannerisms, noting cultural cues, and assessing likely responses. Jerk, meanwhile, walked forward confidently, extending a hand in greeting to each representative, his human smile steady and reassuring. Lyra was struck again by the difference in approach. She calculated, Jerk connected. She analyzed, he inspired. Together, they were a team that balanced reason with intuition, caution with courage. The negotiations began in a large council chamber carved from the planet's native stone, polished smooth and glowing faintly from embedded crystals. Voices rose and fell as delegates debated ownership of the minerals, trading rights, and protective agreements. Lyra observed every detail, noting the subtle shifts in expression, tone, and body language. Jerk listened too, but differently. He focused on the underlying concerns, the emotions behind the words, and the unspoken needs of each delegate. Hours passed. Frustration grew as deadlock threatened. Lyra's logic suggested compromise on technical terms, but she could see that emotion and pride would prevent resolution. Jerk leaned toward her, whispering, "Watch this." He stood, addressing the council with a calm but confident tone. "I understand your concerns," he said. "But consider what could happen if we fail. Resources wasted, alliances broken, and everyone loses. We can work together, not just because it's logical, but because it's necessary for all of us." Lyra felt a ripple of surprise. Humans could speak not only with clarity, but with empathy. Their words, grounded in intuition and understanding of emotion, carried weight beyond logic alone. The council's delegates began nodding, exchanging glances. Slowly, the room's tension began to ease. Lyra joined in, presenting technical solutions and precise compromises, weaving Jerk's intuitive approach with her calculated strategies. Together, they formed a bridge between logic and human insight, reason and courage. Every suggestion was met with consideration, every objection addressed with clarity and respect. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the negotiations reached a turning point. One particularly stubborn delegate, a towering creature with a thick armored hide, refused to accept compromise. Lyra's calculations suggested a detailed plan of concession and counteroffers, but it would take hours to implement. Jerk acted differently. He approached the delegate personally, speaking directly, appealing to shared goals and common threats, using gestures and tone that conveyed sincerity beyond words. Lyra watched, astonished, as the delegate's stance softened. Within moments, cooperation replaced resistance. "That was impressive," Lyra admitted quietly. Jerk smiled faintly. "Sometimes action and understanding achieve more than endless calculations." By nightfall, the negotiations were concluded. Agreements were signed, alliances strengthened, and peace preserved. Lyra felt a rush of relief and pride. She realized that human adaptability, courage, and insight had played as much a role as her own careful planning. The combination had been transformative. As they returned to Zephyria, Lyra reflected on the journey. She had feared being paired with a human, worried about their unpredictability and recklessness. Now she understood. Unpredictability could be strength, courage could be wisdom, and humans could achieve remarkable outcomes when trusted and respected. "Today," Jerk said quietly as they watched the stars pass by the transport window, "was a good example of what we can do together. You calculate, I act, we complement each other. And maybe we make a better team than either of us imagined." Lyra considered his words. They were simple, yet profound. She had spent her life relying on logic and calculation, believing that control was the key to success. But she had learned that trust, adaptability, and courage were equally important. And humans, Jerk in particular, embodied those qualities in ways she could not have predicted. She turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting starlight. "You have changed my perspective, Jerk. I once feared humans, but now I see them differently. I see their value, their strength, their courage." He smiled, a warmth in his eyes that made her heart beat faster than she expected. "And you've shown me that careful thought and preparation can make all the difference. Together, we're stronger than either of us alone." For the first time, Lyra felt an emotion she could not easily name. It was more than respect, more than admiration. It was the recognition of potential, not just in Jerk, but in the partnership they had formed. Humans were extraordinary, and being paired with one had transformed her understanding of the galaxy, of collaboration, and of possibility. When they returned to Zephyria, the AI officially acknowledged the success of their mission. The record stated that the pairing of Lyra and Jerk had achieved results beyond expectations, combining calculation and improvisation, precision and courage, analysis and instinct. Lyra felt a quiet satisfaction. She had feared humans, yet humans, and Jerk in particular, had proven themselves in ways she could not have imagined. That evening, as the city sparkled beneath the twin suns and the night sky filled with distant stars, Lyra and Jerk walked together through the quiet streets. No words were needed. Their shared experiences had built trust, understanding, and a bond that went beyond language. Lyra realized that the greatest lesson she had learned was not about humans alone, but about partnership, the ability to combine strengths, embrace differences, and achieve outcomes neither could reach alone. "You've transformed more than just the mission," Jerk said softly, breaking the silence. "You've changed the way I see everything." Lyra smiled, her heart full. And you've transformed the way I see humans. I no longer fear them. I admire them. I respect them. Jerk laughed quietly. That's progress. I'll take it. They paused to look up at the stars above Zephyria. The city below shimmered like a field of light, alive with countless beings, each contributing in their own way. Lyra understood now that humans were not to be feared. They were to be understood, valued, and embraced. Their courage, adaptability, and willingness to act made them extraordinary. And she knew that, with trust and collaboration, humans and aliens together could achieve incredible things. Lyra turned to Jerk one last time. Perhaps the galaxy is larger, stranger, and more wonderful than I ever imagined. And perhaps humans are a part of that wonder in ways I am only beginning to understand. He smiled warmly, reaching out to gently touch her hand. And we'll discover it together. As they walked back to their quarters, side by side, Lyra felt a deep sense of hope and possibility. She had feared being paired with a human. She had doubted, worried, and imagined disaster. But now, after trials, missions, and challenges that tested every skill, every instinct, she realized the truth. Humans were extraordinary, not in spite of their unpredictability, but because of it. The galaxy was vast, full of unknowns and possibilities. And with humans like Jerk, Lyra felt ready to face anything. Together, they had transformed fear into trust, doubt into respect, and uncertainty into achievement. And for Lyra, that was more than enough. It was proof that humans, when understood and trusted, could not only survive but inspire, lead, and change the universe in ways no calculation alone could achieve. She smiled quietly as the stars stretched endlessly above. For the first time, she truly believed in the power of partnership, courage, and the remarkable potential of humanity. The future was bright, and she was ready.